When Rome finally destroyed Carthage in 146 BCE, it was not only the city's walls and temples that were left in ruins. Its very reputation was also reduced to ashes. Among the many accusations leveled against Carthage, one stood out as especially horrifying: the claim that the Carthaginians sacrificed their own children to the gods. For centuries, this story has haunted the memory of Carthage, casting its religion as dark, cruel, and barbaric. But was it true? Or was it a weapon of propaganda sharpened by Carthage's enemies to justify its destruction? At the center of this mystery stands one haunting place: the Tophet. The Tophet was a sacred precinct, an open-air sanctuary filled with stone stelae and urns buried beneath the earth. Each urn contained the ashes and bones of infants, sometimes mixed with those of young animals. Thousands of these urns have been discovered in Carthage and other Punic sites. To ancient Greek and Roman writers, the Tophet was proof of ritual child sacrifice. Diodorus of Sicily, writing in the 1st century BCE, described with chilling detail how Carthaginians placed infants into the arms of a bronze statue of Baal Hammon, the flames consuming them as drums drowned out their cries. Plutarch, Tertullian, and other writers echoed similar claims, portraying Carthage as a city that purchased divine favor with the lives of its own children. For Rome, such stories served a powerful purpose. To defeat Carthage was not only a military victory, it was a moral crusade. By portraying Carthage as monstrous, Rome justified its destruction. The image of Carthaginian priests casting infants into fire became a symbol of everything Rome claimed to stand against. But propaganda is not proof. Was this truly the practice of Carthage, or an invention of its enemies? Archaeology provides a more complicated picture. Excavations of the Tophet at Carthage, first in the 1920s and later in the 20th century, uncovered thousands of urns containing cremated remains of infants and animals. The stelae placed above them often bore inscriptions dedicated to Baal Hammon and Tanit, thanking the gods for hearing prayers. Some depict religious symbols, including the sign of Tanit, a triangle topped with a circle and arms, carved into stone. Clearly, this was a site of sacred importance, maintained over centuries. But what exactly do these remains mean? Some scholars argue that the Tophet was indeed a place of child sacrifice. They point to the sheer number of infant remains, to the inscriptions that speak of vows fulfilled to the gods, and to the consistency with ancient accounts. According to this view, Carthaginians in times of crisis or devotion offered their most precious possession, their children, in exchange for divine favor. It was a practice rooted in Phoenician tradition, echoing similar sacrifices mentioned in biblical texts about neighboring peoples. For these scholars, the Tophet confirms that Carthage's religion contained a ritual darker than most societies could imagine. Others, however, challenge this conclusion. They argue that the infants buried in the Tophet may have died naturally, victims of the high infant mortality that plagued ancient societies. In this interpretation, the Tophet was not a site of slaughter, but a cemetery for children who died too young to be buried in regular family tombs. The cremation of their bodies and the offerings to the gods were ways of sanctifying their short lives, giving them a place of honor close to the divine. The inclusion of animal remains, such as lambs and birds, may represent substitute offerings, not companions in sacrifice. This debate has raged for decades. Modern studies of the remains reveal a mix of ages, some infants stillborn, others only a few months old. This has led some researchers to suggest that while most were natural deaths, some may have been deliberate sacrifices, perhaps during times of extreme crisis, like war or famine, when the city turned desperately to its gods. In this view, the Tophet was not simply a cemetery nor a mass execution ground, but a complex religious space where life, death, devotion, and sacrifice intertwined. The imagery of sacrifice loomed large in Carthaginian religion. To the Carthaginians, giving up what was most valuable was the ultimate proof of faith. Offerings of animals, food, and wealth were common, but in extraordinary circumstances, a greater sacrifice might be demanded. This was not unique to Carthage. Ancient texts describe similar practices among other Phoenician communities, and even in the Hebrew Bible, the story of Abraham nearly sacrificing Isaac reflects the same cultural world, where the idea of offering a child to the divine was not unthinkable. Yet Carthage bore the stigma more than any other. Roman writers painted the Tophet as a symbol of barbarism, contrasting it with their own ideals. But Rome, too, practiced human sacrifice in its early history, though it was later abandoned. The difference lay in power. Rome was the victor, and Carthage the vanquished. History is written by the winners, and in this case, Rome's version of Carthage became the one remembered. The Tophet remains one of the most haunting legacies of Carthage. Walking through the excavated site today, one sees rows of stelae, their carvings eroded but still visible. The ground beneath holds the ashes of thousands of lives, silent witnesses to rituals we can never fully reconstruct. Was it the smoke of sacrifice that rose here, or the prayers of grieving parents offering their lost children to the gods? Perhaps both. The ambiguity is part of what makes the Tophet so powerful and so disturbing. Whatever the truth, the Tophet reveals the intensity of Carthaginian devotion. Religion was not a separate sphere of life, but its very foundation. To the people of Carthage, the gods held absolute power over survival. In times of drought, famine, or war, the line between desperate faith and brutal necessity may have blurred. In their sacred fires, we see both the strength and the vulnerability of a civilization that staked everything on divine favor. For us today, the Tophet controversy is more than an archaeological puzzle. It is a reminder of how easily history can be shaped by propaganda, how the memory of a people can be distorted by their enemies. Was Carthage truly a city that sacrificed its children, or was it condemned by Rome's pen long after its fall? The answer may never be fully known, but the story continues to fascinate because it forces us to confront the deepest questions about faith, survival, and the price of devotion. In our next episode, we will step away from the temples and sanctuaries to look at the seas. Carthage was above all a maritime power, and its ships ruled the Mediterranean. Join us as we explore the Carthaginian fleet, the technology of its shipbuilders, and how mastery of the sea allowed Carthage to become the greatest naval power of its age. Stay with us as we uncover the early history of Carthage, a civilization of myths, mysteries, and controversies that still echo across the centuries.